Around the world, millions of people exchange goods, information, and technology at a faster rate than ever before imagined. The number of people studying abroad and immigrating for higher-paying jobs has increased dramatically. Fresh fruit? Even in wintertime, it's available from warmer climates around the world. Globalization may offer opportunities the world has never seen before, but not everyone benefits from having the world within reach. Perched on the side of a mountain in southern Mexico, the town of Tilapa has seen its share of hard times. Coffee has been its primary source of income for years, but the people of Tilapa didn't anticipate that the world coffee prices would collapse.
When the price of coffee falls, it affects all of us because there isn't money. There isn't money, not for us, not for the children.
It was the government itself that motivated the planting of coffee. This was a positive surprise for the indigenous and farmers, because it was a market that was just opening. And the result of the first harvest was that they had high profits. But nobody told them that coffee depends on an international price.
They don't have anywhere to take the coffee anymore. That is what the woman from here told me. They are throwing it away because it has no value, because it isn't any good anymore. We are the ones who are ruined because we are working so that others can profit. That is the problem.
Sometimes the people do not harvest their coffee because it doesn't make enough to pay the laborers. They leave the coffee right there to rot. It is ruined. Everyone is ruined. There is no corn. There isn't any sustenance. Sometimes the children go to school without eating because there's nothing. If there were money, a good price for coffee, then yes, we would struggle on. If they continue their study, that is the only hope. But while there isn't a good price, we don't achieve anything.
From the 1960s through the 1980s, the International Coffee Agreement, or ICA, regulated prices and imposed quotas on its producers. In 1989, the U.S. pulled out of the ICA because it felt that regulated coffee prices were no longer in its best interest. The failure of the ICA and the subsequent Association of Coffee-Producing Countries was due in part to lack of worldwide participation. Without quotas and price control, production soared and prices fell. Coffee farmers were completely at the mercy of the market, where supply quickly outgrew demand. That was good news for big companies that owned coffee brands like Nescafe and Maxwell House. The oversupply meant they could bid producers against each other, driving prices for raw beans lower and lower. Over 90% of coffee profits now go to processors and retailers, leaving little for the farmers who work the fields.
The market is perverse. It attracts you, charms you, but in the end it betrays you. There are no feelings in the market, no values.
For some fortunate coffee-growing communities, fair trade companies like Equal Exchange have partnered with them to alleviate the harsh reality of the market by offering a guaranteed minimum price for coffee, regardless of the market price, and cutting out the middleman. Equal Exchange offers coffee farmers a fair share of the profits. But the people of Tilapa are still waiting for fair trade practices to reach their remote village.
I do see fair trade as an alternative, but it is a vulnerable alternative that depends very much on whether I am known or not known, on whether by chance someone came here and passed through Tilapa and said, "Listen, I can buy your coffee."
Where governments once would have stepped in to alleviate poverty and offer assistance to their farmers, their hands are now tied by trying to compete in the global marketplace. How did this happen? In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, signaling the end of the Cold War. Into the vacuum of power left by failed communist economies, the free market entered with a vengeance. In most countries around the world, government control of the market was out, and the free market was in. The new law of the land was that markets rule. Many international leaders saw the free market as the only way to sustain economic growth and open their borders to international investors and businesses. But not everyone benefited from the abrupt change from state protectionism to the eat or be eaten free market. Some had the education and connections to capitalize on the opportunities and profited handsomely. But many were not prepared for the new rules of the market that valued efficiency and innovation and disregarded tradition and any social safety net. Small-scale producers like most Mexican farmers see little benefit from free market globalization.
The great deceit of the globalizing model is that the only things spoken about are macroeconomic indicators that never get to the stomach of the farmer and the indigenous. We see how the entrance into globalization signifies the opposite for the indigenous peoples: more backwardness, more hunger, more violence, more suffering.
Saturnino Garcia Reyes is a corn farmer in the state of Guerrero, Mexico. He and the other farmers in the town of Zacango have always relied on corn as a staple in their diet. In good years, they've been able to sell some of the excess corn to buy other necessities.
Mi papá, él fue quien nos enseñó a.
My father was the one who taught us how to cultivate the fields, because only from them could we live. He always told us that in order to eat, one must work, and corn is the only thing that produces. It is the basic food that we have here. With respect to corn, the population of this region, as in all Mesoamerica, is characterized for its dependence on corn as the principal product of their diet. The production of corn is the most important in the family economy, even though the lands are not suitable for the production of corn.
To diminish the impact of poor soil and a harsh climate for farming in Guerrero, the Mexican government offered financial assistance to farmers, but were restricted by International Monetary Fund regulations. Caught in the middle between IMF pressure and the farmers' needs, the Mexican government encouraged farmers to update their farming practices. These included planting disease-resistant hybrid corn and using chemical fertilizers to increase the yield of the crops. While the short-term benefits of increased productivity were immediately evident, farmers eventually started to experience the negative side.
Before, in other times, they always used organic fertilizers, and the organics are what maintain the earth. As soon as we started to use chemical fertilizers, the land started to deteriorate as well. If we don't use chemical fertilizers in these days, the planting doesn't produce. That is to say, one needs to use a chemical fertilizer to have a harvest.
The
introduction of improved seeds, fungicides, herbicides, more agricultural tools and machinery, these really benefit the big industries of the city more than the farmers themselves.
The fact that farmers were now buying seed and fertilizers meant that more money was changing hands. In macroeconomic terms, this counted as progress for the Mexican economy. But to the farmer, it looks different. The high costs of hybrid seeds and fertilizers are hard to pay for when the market for corn disappears. It's not that the Mexican people were eating less corn. Rather, the United States government was subsidizing large corn farmers and agribusinesses in the U.S., allowing them to sell corn at a price lower than the cost of production. Small-scale Mexican farmers can't compete with the low prices, so they lose their market to cheap imports.
Today, with the signing of the Free Trade Treaty, the famous NAFTA, we have a disadvantage in competition in many industries. Many industries that are subsidized, that are supported by a government, can bring corn, for example, at costs far below the production costs in the Mexican countryside.
Mexico remains completely at a disadvantage. That is to say that in Mexico, there have not been conditions for having a basic groundwork among the people that permits them to enter into a market.
As farmers begin to find that small-scale farming can no longer sustain them and their families, many are driven north to the United States to find higher wages. Migrant work and low-paying blue-collar work still mean a big pay increase, and dollars stretch much further than pesos in Mexico.
Yes, many leave. We leave to look somewhere else, to other countries, in search of improving ourselves a little.
Saturnino and his son Antonio both crossed the border to work in the lemon groves of California. Saturnino spent 3 years there, waiting for the day when he could return home to his family.
One of the advantages about migrating to the United States is that if I make $100 there and I send it here to Mexico, it would be 1,000. In order for me to make 1,000 pesos here, I need to work about 2 weeks, and there I can make it in 1 day.
Now, thanks to God, with the additional help from my husband, who left to suffer on the other side, we now at least have enough to get by. My only desires and intentions are to earn a little bit of money so that my daughters study and have a better future in their lives. All that we do for that reason, we do for them, so that they come out ahead, so that they don't suffer the same as us.
After 3 years in the lemon, orange, and avocado groves in California, Saturnino returned to his family.
When
I returned here to Mexico, I felt good. I felt proud. I found my whole family. And I was proud of them, because they were all still together.
Saturnino's son Antonio still picks fruit in California, but hopes to return home to be with his family soon.
I have been here 4 years already. For me to stay here, well, no. No, I haven't thought about that. I want to go to Mexico. Hopefully this year I'll go. My sisters are studying because at least here I'm helping them. Right now, they have the opportunity to study. Now that the opportunity presented itself, I want to help my parents as well.
The best that could happen is that, in fact, the immigrants help to increase the quality of life of those who remain. Here, outside our house, a block away, are indigenous families going to the monetary exchange to exchange the dollars that are arriving from their children. In other words, they are subsidizing the communities so that they don't lose their own identity.
The race towards globalization probably won't slow down or go away. As Christians, we have a responsibility to our global neighbors whose lives have been devastated by this unfair race to accumulate wealth through more global connectedness. Transnational corporations profit most from the global marketplace, and the decisions we make every day allow those corporations to profit. It is only by making choices based on conscience rather than money that we can begin to counter the impact of economic globalization. For example, we can buy the cheapest products we can find, or we can choose to spend a few more dollars to buy goods that are fairly traded. The challenge is to shape globalization so that it benefits the world's impoverished majority, not just a privileged few. As Christians, we can embrace just consumer choices while advocating for more just global economic policies.
So I believe that the challenge is how to reconsider globalization from the bottom up. We will think from an empty stomach how globalization should be, so that our stomach isn't empty. We have to think from the perspective of a child or an uneducated woman, so that from there it is globalized. Here, one must offset economic globalization with the globalization of justice, with the globalization of respect for human rights, with the globalization of a human economy.